Well, it's that time of the year again. The winter pause is upon us, and let's do a state of the season address here. Check in on how things are going for Bayern Munich this season so far under new head coach Vincent Kompany. Let's rate every single player on the squad, including the manager. And let's take a look at some predictions that I made in the beginning of the year, see how they're stacking up, and maybe see how the team will do for the rest of the season, or at least how I think they're going to do. And also check in on the state of the Bundesliga as a whole, running down the entire table. Let's jump right in. Welcome back to the Always Bayern Chelsea show, everybody. You just have me today here, Danny. I'm the Bayern Munich fan. And before we go any further, this is indeed a video episode, so go check us out on the YouTube channel. Make sure to like and subscribe, of course, as we're considering figuring out how to make more video content going forward here. Jim and I, he's the Chelsea fan, but this video will just be about Bayern Munich, so again, you just got me today. If you like what you hear, you can also check out the show on Apple and Spotify. If you are someone who just listens to podcasts in general, Jim and I, if you don't know, review all the matches, we preview some matches, and just kind of keep you up to date with everything going on with my squad, Bayern Munich, and also with Jim's squad, Chelsea. And like I said in the introduction, the Hinrunde is wrapping up, and let's just go over how things are going, give some player ratings, and check in on predictions. So without further ado, here we go. All right, so starting with the Bundesliga, right now Bayern Munich sits at the top of the table with 36 points. They have 11 wins, 3 draws, and 1 loss so far. Overall, a solid start for Bayern in the Bundesliga. Obviously, you can't complain about being the top of the table. There have been some matches, some big matches. For example, the loss to Mainz that just happened, and also some draws. Bayern drew to Frankfurt, Leverkusen, and Dortmund, where they haven't necessarily looked the best in these big matches. Now, this is maybe a common theme that we'll see throughout the review, but Bayern has been dealing with some injuries, so at their best, they're crushing the lower table teams, Kiel, Bochum, and even recently we saw them crush Leipzig 5-1 in their final match before the winter pause here. So we've seen things working very well at times when Bayern is fully fit and the attack especially is humming. But we also have seen some downsides. We've seen some mistakes from the defense with this high line that Vincent Kompany has kind of started the season playing. The mistakes from the center backs, for example, positioning, have been crucial and have often led to goals. But overall, we have seen solid performances from Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga from really the whole squad, I would say, overall, the defense, the midfield especially, and the attack. So overall, happy with how things are going in the Bundesliga. In the Champions League, it's a little bit of a different story. Bayern Munich is 10th in the table at the moment with 12 points, and they have 4 wins, 0 draws, and 2 losses. So if you remember, Bayern Munich had a rocky start to the beginning of their Champions League campaign, losing to Villa and then getting throttled by Barcelona 4-1. And that was probably a low point of the season as a whole, that loss to Barcelona. Obviously, Bayern Munich is known for beating up on Barcelona, so to get that loss handed to us was pretty rough. I think it put into question a lot of Kompany's tactics and just the squad as a whole. But we did see them bounce back from that loss with a nice run of play afterwards, and just a nice run of play in the Champions League specifically afterwards. That 5-1 victory over Shakhtar was, I think, kind of the icing on the cake, and Bayern can still get into that top 8 position in the Champions League if they win out. They have 2 matches left in this I think it's maybe being called league phase now. I can't remember. Not the group phase, but, the phase before the knockouts and the phase before things really start heating up. So if Bayern gets into that top 8, which, like I said, is still possible, especially if they win out, they'll be looking pretty good in the Champions League. And if you keep watching this video, I'll give you my prediction for how things shape up in the Bundesliga and the Champions League at the end. The Pokal, unfortunately, Bayern has been eliminated by Bayer Leverkusen. If you remember that match in the round of 16, they started off their campaign good. They won their first 2 matches against Ulm and Mainz in good fashion, convincing fashion. But the Leverkusen match, man, that was a heartbreaker. That was my personal, probably most heartbreaking low point, I guess you could call it, of the season, was the 1-0 loss to Leverkusen, especially because Bayern has been bad in the Pokal recent years, and I really wanted them to do well this year, especially against Leverkusen, their top rival right now in the league. I think it would have been a big confidence boost and just maybe an overall sign of things to come if they would have won. But we did see that infamous foul by Neuer in the beginning of the match, getting a red card. So Bayern played that match down to 10 men for most of the match, and especially losing Neuer, that was a huge blow. And then, showed a lot of fight and spirit in that match, and actually played really well, played like the better team for the majority of the match. Just one small mistake with the communication between, I believe it was Davies and Kim, kind of opened up that goal by Tella for Leverkusen. So, sucked that Bayern lost that one, but now they're out of the Pokal, and so we look at doing well in the Bundesliga and the Champions League for the rest of the year. So I think for the most part, the most important thing to look at here, especially with a new coach, is analyzing how Bayern's playing, and they're clearly playing better than they were last year, I think, under Thomas Tuchel. So it's clear Vincent Kompany has made some good changes. I think he still has room to grow, obviously, in these Champions League matches, or even just these big matches in the Bundesliga. At times, he seems maybe a little bit tactically naive or unable to make some crucial in-game adjustments, but overall, I think the building blocks are there for success, and that's the biggest thing, I think, this year. Obviously, at Bayern Munich, success is the standard, and everybody wants success and looks for success, but sometimes you'd need a little bit of time to build to that level of being the top team in the world, for example, winning the Champions League, being the top team, at least in Europe. And I think, like I said, the building blocks for that success are there under Vincent Kompany, and that's maybe the most important thing that I'm looking at right now. The style of play, like I said, it's attractive, it's good football. I like the attacking mindset. I like the high line. I think that has maybe retreated a little bit in recent games just because of all these injuries. Bayern has faced an insane amount of injuries this season so far. There was periods of time where they had 10, 11 guys out. Kane being out for a stretch really hurt the team. Musiala was even out for a stretch at the beginning of the year. But the attack is multiple wingers are hurt at a time. The right back situation, we haven't had Stanisic, and we've barely had Boué. And then at left back, Davies was injured for a bit. The midfield, Pavlovic and Palhinha have been injured for long stretches. So if Bayern stays healthy in the second half of the year, I think we're going to see some greatness from them. Some top players to mention, Harry Kane, of course. He has 29 goals and assists through all competitions so far. Jamal Musiala is behind him with 20 goals and assists through all competitions, and Michael Olise is right there with 18 goals and assists throughout all competitions as well. All right, so now let's jump into my player ratings so far for the first half of the season for Bayern Munich. My scale is 0 to 10, I guess, with 10 being the best, 0 being the worst, and 5 kind of being in the middle. So if some of these ratings maybe sound harsh, just keep in mind that's sort of the scale I'm going off of. But first, let's start with keepers. We, of course, got Manuel Neuer. I'm giving him a 6.5. Hasn't been Neuer's best season so far in terms of decision-making, especially. He's clearly lost a step as he's aged, but I'm not one of those people who's calling for Neuer to retire or to, stop right now. I think that he is still by far Bayern's best option at the keeper position. And also, a lot of the goals that he's let in have been really just due to mistakes on the defense, and with the aggressive style that Bayern plays, a lot of the goals that are scored are essentially one-on-ones with Neuer and an attacker, and you don't expect anybody to stop most of these goals. So yeah, that being said, I'm giving Neuer a 6.5. There's room to improve, but I don't rate him as low as I think a lot of Bayern fans, or at least a lot of Bayern fans that I'm seeing online, do. And then Daniel Peretz, I'm giving a 4 out of 10. He has not really stepped up to the plate in Neuer's absence, in my opinion. He's done okay, don't get me wrong. I'm not completely taking a dig at the guy. I just don't think he's quite ready yet for Bayern Munich standards. His decision-making seems a little bit questionable, his distribution especially, and I get it. No one is going to play the style that Neuer does, where he's so involved in the defense and even the attack sometimes, playing up to the midfield. I get it. Nobody's doing that. That's Manuel Neuer through and through, but just something about the way Peretz plays really does not instill confidence in the entire defense for me. He's looked shaky so far, but has had some nice saves, so not horrible, but I just don't think he's quite ready yet. I think with time, I think physically he certainly could get there, so we'll wait and see what happens with Peretz, but like I said, right now I'm giving him a 4. And then I can't really rate Sven Ulreich because he's been away from the team for a while and, just hasn't played a lot. So I don't have a rating for him. Then moving on to the defense, there's also a lot of defenders who I don't quite have a rating for because, they've just been injured or have not had pretty much any playing time. And that would be Buckman, Ito, Stanisic, and Asnu. With the case of Ito and Stanisic, they've been injured all season, and then I guess same with Buckman, and and Asnu hasn't got much playing time at all. And then moving up to Eric Dyer, I'm giving him a 5 out of 10. I think Dyer has looked pretty average when he's played, which hasn't been a lot, so in his defense, it must be really hard to just be called upon 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. I can't imagine it's easy to shake off rust or integrate yourself into the team with that kind of playing time. And that's one of the things I'm looking for going forward. I think Vincent Kompany has to rotate the center backs. He's falling into the trap that Tuchel did last year, which was playing Upamecano and Kim 90 minutes every game. And by the second half of the year, they were both beat up. They were dealing with knocks, and also maybe more importantly, mentally, they were clearly fatigued and making more mistakes than usual. So if that happens again in the second half of the season, it's going to be tough, for Bayern Munich to compete with these top teams, especially in the Champions League. Next up, I'm giving both Sacha Boey and Rafa Guerreiro a 6. Guerreiro has done a very nice job of stepping up for injured players and kind of being that utility guy that he is, playing all over the pitch. He's played some right back, some left back. He's been integrated into the midfield too, so Guerreiro has done a solid job, I've thought, this year. Really nothing super special from him, but players like him you need on your team, especially when you're dealing with the amount of injuries that Bayern Munich has dealt with. Sacha Boey, I'm super disappointed that he has not been healthy for much of this year. I've actually liked what I've seen out of him so far. It hasn't knocked my socks off by any means, but it has been solid at the right back position. The problem is he just is hardly ever playing because he's hardly ever fit. Really, since Bayern got him last January, we've hardly seen him at all. So a 6 out of 10 for Boey. I'm still curious about him, but I'm getting very discouraged with his injury history, unfortunately. Next up is Konrad Laimer. I'm giving him a 7 out of 10. While we haven't always seen, incredible performances from Laimer this year, he's another guy who I think has done a great job of stepping up in the absence of someone like Stanisic or Boey at the right back position. Laimer's been playing out of position all year. He's a midfielder, but he's been playing right back to make up for guys who have been injured, and especially the last couple matches. I mean, we saw a screamer of a goal from him against Shakhtar in the Champions League, as well as in the Bundesliga here against Leipzig. So congrats to Leimer as well for becoming a new father. He's just had really a blazing last couple month or so. And again, you need players like him in the squad. Then up to Kim. I'm giving Kim a 7 out of 10 as well. Kim has played solid so far this year, especially in the Bundesliga, but we are still seeing his lapses of judgment and his mistakes that he makes that tend to be costly for the team, unfortunately. With Kim, it's mostly positioning and over-aggression where he'll run past somebody and then they'll have essentially an open lane to the goal because of the way that Bayern's high line is playing. The way that their defense is pushing up under Vincent Kompany, he's so oftentimes the last line of defense, and then it leaves maybe Alphonso Davies or Upamecano to be, rushing back there to try to save the day because Kim let somebody blow by him. But yeah, I mean, overall, a more solid performance, I would say, this year than last year from Kim. So it's been kind of a mixed bag, but like I said, especially in the Bundesliga, he's been good overall. So I don't want to let his mistakes overshine his greatness. And then Upamecano, I'm actually giving an 8 out of 10. We have seen a few mistakes from Upamecano here and there that we have seen, last year and maybe the year prior, for example. But overall, Upamecano has been rock solid as I would say the leader of the center back pairing right now. We've seen less mistakes from him. But yeah, it's not an easy job to be a center back in this Bayern squad. What Vincent Kompany is asking the center backs to do is not easy, to really push up super far and control the ball and just control play with the ball at your feet as a center back is no easy task. So Upa's doing a good job. Like I said, I'm worried that he's going to get run into the ground. And like last year, we've seen some, very, very boneheaded challenges from him that lead to penalties or red cards. Yeah, I'm hoping that we don't see those mistakes again this year as the second half of the season pushes on here. And last but not least, Alphonso Davies. I'm giving him a 9 out of 10. Really a great start to the year for Alphonso Davies. One of the biggest turnarounds that we've seen this year for Bayern Munich. He is just playing incredibly. He's playing that left back role, but he's very much inverting under Vincent Kompany. He's inverting, into those half spaces and contributing to the attack while also rushing back and playing defense as well. And that's where I think I wanted to see more from him the last couple years, was his ability to show that effort and that heart on defense, and we're still seeing it. He hasn't been perfect. He's made a few mistakes, but I guess who hasn't? So overall, just a great start to the year from Alphonso Davies. And going forward here in the upcoming podcast, Jim and I will talk about his contract situation as well as the contract situations of some other big stars like Sane and Kimmich and Musiala that Bayern is going to have to deal with hopefully soon. So stay tuned for those, of course. All right, up to the midfield now. We have Leon Goretzka, who I'm giving a 7 out of 10. I think it's been a solid year from him. Goretzka is somebody who the club told to his face and to the media, basically publicly, to pack your bags and leave town. We don't want you anymore. But lo and behold, injuries came, and Goretzka was a crucial part of the team for some big matches here, Champions League, Bundesliga, and he just did a really solid job in the midfield. Can't be easy to be in a position like he's in, but man, he's filled in very nicely for some injured players, contributing with goals and assists. So shout out to Goretzka. I'm happy that he's still part of the team. Now to João Palhinha, who I'm also giving a 7 out of 10. Palhinha has been a little bit of a disappointment this year, and I don't want to sound like I'm being harsh, but yeah, I think took a little while to get integrated with the team. We saw him start to get more minutes when Pavlovic got injured and eventually started to find his footing and kind of be that, 6 destroyer defensive midfielder that Bayern kind of has needed the last couple of years. And right when he was starting to get his feet underneath him, he got injured and then missed the rest of the first half of the season. So I'm looking forward to having Palhinha back and to seeing what he can do. in some of these big-time matches. But yeah, like I said, a little bit of a disappointment, but that's also kind of an unfair criticism because he has been injured for a lot of the year. And when he's played, he has looked solid. I think that maybe I was just a little bit overhyping him because of the year-long pursuit that Bayern Munich had for him. Next up, we have Alexander Pavlovic, who I'm giving an 8 out of 10. If he would have continued with the start of the season that he had, he could very well be at a 9 or a 10. He just had an absolutely incredible start to the season. Yeah, I think even more of a step up than a lot of people thought, which is saying something because he was solid last year as well. But yeah, until the kid broke his collarbone, he was looking like one of the, I would say, 4 most important players on this squad, which is saying something considering he's so young and the squad is so good. But yeah, then Pavlovic broke his collarbone, was out for a while, came back, I think, a little bit too fast, and hasn't really looked like himself since, hasn't been as physical, and so maybe that's a mental thing. Obviously, I'm sure he's good to go physically, but overall, I don't want that come back from injury and the injury to overshadow just how good he was at the beginning of the season. His passing accuracy is truly incredible. The long balls that he plays are so beautiful and so important to Bayern Munich's offense. And speaking of another important player, I'm actually giving Joshua Kimmich a 10 out of 10. I know it's a wild grade to give somebody, but I just think he has been so important to the team this year. Offense, defense, midfield, play flows through him, and when he has an off game, everybody has an off game, it seems. And he's able to elevate, I think, the rest of the team, especially the attack and the defense. I mean, I talked about Alphonso Davies' turnaround this year, but Kimmich as well. I mean, he has looked like an absolute stud in the midfield and somebody who I need to be back on this team. I need him to sign again. I need him to be the captain for this team because, wow, what a year Kimmich has had. I feel like on all these episodes where we talk about how well players did in a certain match, I feel like I've ran out of adjectives to describe his outstanding play this year. So, yeah, I mean, Kimmich is the man, and I'm giving him a 10 out of 10. All right, so now we move up to the attackers, and we did have a couple of players who I don't think I have enough information on this year to rate, and that would be Irankunda and Ibrahimovic. Neither of them have played much at all, and I think we'll be looking to see them go out on loan, if not in January, next summer. And now I'm going to start with Mathys Tel, who I'm giving a 5 out of 10, and that kills me, not only because I predicted him to have an incredible year this year, but also because he's just one of my favorite players on the team. But unfortunately, under Vincent Kompany so far this season, he's been more of an afterthought, which is just such a bummer because Tel, I think, was one of the best players on the team last year at coming in and playing that joker role, coming on with fresh legs in maybe the 60th, 70th minute and getting a goal or two or just an assist or providing to the attack somehow. So to see him barely play this year is such a bummer. And when he has played, he hasn't really done anything to solidify a bona fide starting spot or a bona fide really spot in the attack, which is a bummer because, like I said, he can be such a good player, but I think part of the problem is he is a little bit too versatile, which is, it almost sounds counterproductive, but he can play striker, but then Bayern has Kane. He can play wing, but Bayern has so many wingers. So he just falls in this, bucket of, it seems like Kompany doesn't know what to do with him. And when he's played so far this year, he's played as a wing, and Bayern's wingers play real wide, almost on the touchline on the side there. And that's not the best role for Tel. He's better at operating in those half spaces, I think, which are unfortunately occupied by Musiala mostly, and then also the wing backs who will invert. So Davies and whoever's playing right back will be on the other side in that half space. So it doesn't leave a lot of room for Tel, which is a bummer. We'll see what happens going forward. We'll see if he goes on loan or what happens if he's able to get more playing time. With the way that Bayern's wingers are consistently injured, I think that he maybe should stick around for a little bit, and I think Kompany's got to find a way to integrate him in the team. But I have a feeling he's going to be needed with the way that injuries are for Bayern's wingers. Now, Kingsley Coman, I'm giving a 5.5 out of 10. He has looked all right when he's played, and I've actually been surprised with how much Kompany was relying on him in the beginning of the season. He actually seemed like the top left winger under Kompany for a while. I don't think he's been great this year. I think his crossing, his finishing really lacks, that final lethal touch that you really want to see from a winger. I think he just leaves something to be desired at the position. I do think he's been great, especially off ball, and he's really good at burning the defense and just, creating chaos in the attack, which is something that you need. I feel like Bayern needs a little bit of a refresh at that winger position, and I feel like Coman is the one to go because of his lack of finishing, his lack of crossing, which is really what you want to see from a winger, especially when you have somebody like Kane who's going to need service in the box. It's just a bummer because Coman can be very good, but he hasn't shown it a lot this year. He's shown it for a brief stretch where he was kind of scoring a lot, playing great off the ball as always, and just being a massive contributor to the attack, but that was only for a few games, and then he's also so injury prone, It's the problem with a lot of these Bayern wingers, but Coman has been out for a while, and it seems like you're only going to get him healthy maybe 50% of the time, which just isn't enough. And the same could be said about Serge Gnabry, which also breaks my heart to say because I really love Gnabry, but he's just not healthy enough. He's only healthy like Coman about 50% of the time. I'm rating Serge Gnabry a 6 out of 10 because I think he had such a strong start to the season. He teetered off, certainly, but he flew out of the gates under Kompany, and it looked like he was completely revitalized, rejuvenated, and then started to teeter off and then got injured. So we're going to see what happens with Gnabry here. I'm hoping that he is healthy because I want to see him in the second half of the season. I think, like Coman and like all of Bayern's wingers, his ceiling is so high, and he started the year at that ceiling, and it looked great. But then, his floor is pretty low, and he is also injury prone. Next on the list of Bayern's mercurial wingers is Leroy Sané, who I'm rating a 6.5 out of 10. Sané, like all the wingers, is injury prone at this point and also up and down. Sané's ceiling, I would argue, is the highest, and he had a very, very slow start to the season this year. But, since then has looked a little bit better. The last two games, he's scored a goal in each game. And, if you remember the beginning of the season last year, he was on fire. He was absolutely incredible, untouchable, scoring goals and assists left and right. But Tuchel was playing him too much, in my opinion. And then, we saw those injuries come, and he was kind of never the same since. Even at the start of this year, he wasn't really the same. But we're looking to see Sané get healthy. Bayern right now doesn't sound like they want to re-sign him or extend his contract, so we'll see what happens there. Like I said, I'm going to talk a lot more about that in the coming episodes of the regular podcast show. But I want to see Sané play more. I want to see Sané play more and see what we got in him. I think out of Coman, Gnabry, and Sané is actually the best of the three. He is, I think, better at the left wing, which we're actually seeing now because Coman and Gnabry are hurt. I've wanted Sané to play at the left wing with Olise at the right wing for more of the big matches, and I think we're finally starting to see that. So we'll see what happens in the second half of the year. But beginning of the year, Sané was hardly playing, and when he was playing at right wing. One thing that I love about Sané is his defensive ability to track back, and really all of Bayern's wingers are like this. Coman and Gnabry, I could give them a shout out for this as well, but they're so good at tracking back and defending. Next up, we have Thomas Muller. I'm giving him a 6.5 out of 10 as well. Muller started off the year very, very strong, but then seemed to have lost a step, and that might have been because he wasn't getting any playing time. Kompany kind of refused to play him until injuries really forced him to play. And we have seen him take a step back for sure. He's aging, and I don't think is somebody who should play 90 minutes a match, but I do want to see more of Thomas Muller because, like I said, we've seen glimpses of who he can be. He doesn't receive very much help from his teammates. I don't think a lot of the wingers really know how to play with him, but yeah, when he's on and providing that spark that Bayern really needs sometimes. So I'm not ready to write him off yet. I think with being used properly, receiving the proper service, and maybe not playing 90 minutes a game, Muller can be a very important part of this team. Michael Olise, I'm giving a 7.5 out of 10. I think he's been the best winger so far for Bayern Munich, and when he's hot, like all the wingers, I feel like a broken record, he's really, really good. I think he's been the most consistent so far of the wingers. I don't like how he's worked when Kompany has played him in a more central role. I think he's better, on that right wing, maybe cutting in and operating sometimes in those half spaces. But yeah, I think Olise has been very good for how new he is to the squad, and I think he's only going to get better. I think when he's more integrated into the squad, I think he will, continue to improve. Whereas I think someone like Gnabry or Coman, I think what we've seen so far from them is what we're going to get. Olise, I'm more excited about with, when he builds up that chemistry, I'm very excited to see what he can do. I've loved what he's done so far, especially linking up with Musiala and Kane. I think that's the most exciting. And speaking of Musiala and Kane, we'll go Jamal Musiala next. I'm giving him a 10 out of 10. He's really stepped it up and been the guy at Bayern Munich, especially when Kane has been injured. Musiala is just such a vital part of this team, and it goes without saying, but Bayern, sign him. Give him however much money he wants because Jamal Musiala should be the face of the team going forward. He's improved a lot even off of last year where we would see him more often dribble into a bunch of defenders and then just not do anything. He does that once in a while now, but more often than not, he's doing more than that, and he is blowing by defenders and scoring goals and even contributing from the standpoint of getting headers this year, which is absolutely wild. It's shocking that Musiala, is doing things like heading and shooting long shots this year. It's awesome. But next we're going to move on to Harry Kane. I'm also giving Kane a 10 out of 10. What a year from Kane. I mean, the production that you receive out of him, yes, the criticism that he gets about not being in the box is true sometimes, but man, I mean, the absolute legend that he is and the amount of goals that he scores is unbelievable. The way he produces for the team unselfishly, it's something that really no other striker and almost no other player in the world does. I mean, the attack is lost without him, and when he's there, he contributes so much to this team. 10 out of 10 for Harry Kane. The build-up, the creativity he brings to this attack is unmatched. Bayern don't really have traditional wingers who will play wide and look to cross balls into the number 9. Their wingers are oftentimes cutting in and creating for themselves, so Kane has to find a way to work with that, not crowd the box, but also be in the box when the time comes and when service does arrive. So yeah, it's not an easy job, but Kane still scores as many goals as anybody else in the world. So now let's move on to predictions, because I did make some predictions at the beginning of the season. I've talked about them in the other State of the Season addresses, October international break, November international break. So if you want to, go back and watch those and see what I thought about the team at that point. But I think it's interesting to continue to do these and, maybe tweak some things or just see how I'm feeling as the team evolves. So first of all, the Bundesliga. I predicted at the beginning of the year that Bayern Munich would win the Bundesliga this year. They would get back to their winning ways in the league, and I still think that's the case. Bayern is atop the table right now, although I do think Leverkusen is for real. I think they're not to be underestimated. I think they're peaking right now, and I think they will continue to stay hot. So I think Bayern is going to have to stay healthy, first and foremost, and I think they're going to have to not let their guard down. But if they do those things, I think that they will win the Bundesliga this year. Now, the Pokal, I predicted them to kind of lose early again, which, depending on what your definition is of early, you could maybe say that was the case. I look at the Leverkusen match as the final, essentially. No disrespect to the other teams that are still alive in there. Leipzig, for example, is still around. But yeah, I think that it sucks. I talked about that loss and the red card for Neuer already in this video. Playing with 10 men, but still showing heart and still actually playing like the better team. It's just tough because I really wanted Bayern to win the Pokal and maybe complete the double this year, but it's not going to happen. So Bayern is out of the Pokal. Really nothing to predict there, but the big one, the Champions League. How do I think Bayern Munich will do in the Champions League? In the beginning of the season, I predicted that they would lose to Real Madrid wherever they faced Madrid, so whether that be the final or the, round of 16, round of 8, quarterfinals, semifinals, they would lose to Madrid. I could still see that happening, of course. It's just Real Madrid in the Champions League, But, I think in one of the State of the Seasons, I kind of said, all right, they'll probably make it past the league phase into that knockout phase and lose there. That's kind of where I'm still at. I don't think that they will honestly be able to stay healthy enough to compete with the best of the best. Liverpool right now looks incredible. We saw how Bayern played against Barcelona, and it wasn't the best. Granted, things could have went differently in that match if a few balls fell a different way, but, I'm not yet convinced that the defense especially can hold up under the stiffest pressure, the best attacks, because the mistakes will come back to haunt us, and Bayern will have to pay for mistakes if they make them against these top teams. So while I do think Bayern will continue to advance in the Champions League, I don't think they're going to win it this year, even though the final is in Munich. That would be special to see, and I hope I'm proven wrong. I hope that they peak at the right time, because I do think that Bayern does have the talent to win the Champions League. But it's about more than talent with the Champions League. It's about, first of all, a little bit of luck. It's about staying healthy, which is, if you can't tell, the main thing I'm worried about. But yeah, it's also about just playing smart and, winning matches however you can. So we'll see what happens in the Champions League. I'm still just excited to watch Bayern, and when the time comes, I'm going to believe in them as I always do, and yeah, just have a good time with it. All right, so lastly, I've been doing this on all these State of the Season addresses, but I like to look at the Bundesliga table. I love the Bundesliga. It's my favorite league in the world. I love the product. I love the style of football. I love the atmosphere. I love the culture. I love everything about it. So I'm going to go run down the table, talk about where each team is and how many points they have. Maybe, if they were a surprise, maybe I'll give a little prediction as to where I think the teams will finish off the second half of the year. So, yeah, this is a little segment, I guess you could call it, that I love to do, as I've been watching a lot of Bundesliga ball this year. As we mentioned, top of the table, Bayern Munich. 36 points. I think that they will remain at the top, like I said in my prediction segment. But second, we have Leverkusen, and I think Leverkusen will remain second. They have 32 points right now, and I think they're going to put up a hell of a fight for the title second half of the season. Third place, we have Frankfurt with 27 points. Frankfurt's one of my favorite teams in the Bundesliga. I think they have that correct combination of veterans as well as exciting, young, explosive talent. Obviously with Marmoush and Ikiteki at the top there leading that attack. It's super electric. It's fun to watch. I like Dino Topmuller as a coach a lot. I like his football. They play long balls out of the back a lot up to that exciting attack, and they're just fun to watch. They've teetered off a little at the end. They lost to Leipzig twice, once in the Pokal and then once in the Bundesliga, and then lost to Mainz at the end of the Hinrunde here. So they're they started off super hot and then maybe have slowed down a bit. I think they're still going to be at third at the end of the year. That's my prediction. Fourth place, we have Leipzig, who has 27 points as well. Leipzig, has had an up and down year. They've looked bad in the Champions League. Marco Reus's job is in danger right now. And they've looked good at times in the Bundesliga. They beat Leverkusen, but they also have looked so-so, as we saw Bayern Munich demolished them 5-1. So they're an interesting team. I think they have a good squad. I think they have a deep squad. I think that they have that balance of veterans and youngsters. So yeah, they're a solid team. We'll see. I think they'll end up right around 4th. Now in 5th place, we have a shock, which is Mainz, another one of the teams that I really like in the Bundesliga. I love Bo Henriksen as a coach. I love how they play. And yeah, I mean, Jonathan Burkhardt, their striker, has looked incredible so far this season. It's been really fun to watch him. They also have a couple of Bayern players on loan, Vidovic and Sieb, who haven't been amazing this year, but have been solid. Sieb did really, really good against Bayern when Bayern lost to Mainz. But yeah, they got hot right at the end of the Hinrunde. And yeah, like I said, I like watching them play. I don't know if I mentioned it, but they have 25 points. And I don't think they're going to end quite at 5th, but I think they'll be on the bubble, fighting for a Europe spot. And then in 6th place, we do have Dortmund, also with 25 points. Dortmund, I think, is getting hot right now. I think they're starting to figure things out under Nuri Sahin. And they have looked a little bit lost at times. He's, pushing them to play a more aggressive brand of football versus their kind of trademark defensive style. So he's maybe modernizing them a little bit. They have a great squad. They have guys like Gittins who are playing great right now, Guirassy. I think that Dortmund is going to be kind of around the 5th spot, maybe 4th by the time the season ends. I have a feeling they'll be all right. They're also doing very good in the Champions League, so we'll see what that does to Dortmund, but I don't think they're going to kind of crack the top 3 per se, but I think they'll be up there. In 7th place, we have Werder Bremen. They have 25 points as well, so it's very tight in this part of the table. I would say like 11th to 5th is really tight, and we're probably going to see a lot of movement. I think that Bremen will be punching for a European spot. I don't think they're going to finish as high up as 7th, but good for them so far. They've been hot at the right time as well at the end of the Hinrunde. Then we have Gladbach in 8th place, who Bayern Munich plays at the start of the Rückrunde on the 11th, January 11th. With 24 points, again, kind of getting hot at the right time and looking good. I don't think they're going to finish quite as high as 8th, but like Bremen, I think they'll be just pushing for a European spot. And really the same could be said about Freiburg, who is in 9th place with 24 points as well. They had a good run kind of in the middle of the year, but I think they're going to just end up in kind of that, 7th, 8th, 9th area. 6th maybe if they do really well. Then in 10th place we have Stuttgart, who has 23 points, and they have been probably the most disappointing team this season. Stuttgart has had a lot of injuries. They're struggling to manage European football as well as the Bundesliga. They took 2nd place last year, if you remember, ahead of Bayern. But I think that Sebastian Hoeneß is a great coach, and I think that once their players get back healthy, they will kind of make a push and maybe end up in that 6th-ish range in the table. Wolfsburg is at 11th with 21 points. I like Wolfsburg as well. I like the style that they play under Ralph Hasenhüttl. I think I'm for sure butchering his name, but yeah, he plays a very aggressive style of football. You need a certain type of player to work under that system. I might just be talking out of my ass here, but I think he was at Southampton before and kind of, live and die by the sword type, and ended up dying by the sword because he didn't really have the players to play that aggressively. But, I think Wolfsburg has looked nice so far, and I think that they could kind of creep up to that 7th, 8th, 9th range and then make a push for European football. 12th place, we have Union Berlin with 17 points. Berlin started off the season hot, way, way better than I predicted them to be. But that was because they had such a strong defense and such a good just defensive mindset, and they played so well as a unit. where they would hardly concede any goals. They aren't a explosive attacking team, I'll say, but they were playing well as a unit. They have had a massive drop off since that beginning of the season, but I think they'll probably finish right around where they are. 13th place, we have Augsburg with 16 points. Augsburg is just one of those mid-table teams. I don't have a whole lot to say about them. A few good veterans, though, I think it's important to note. 14th place, we have St. Pauli with 14 points. Another team that I like a lot, St. Pauli. They played Bayern Munich great. They lost to Bayern 0-1, and they've had some matches in there that have been surprising. They're a newly promoted squad, and their coach left for Brighton. So you would maybe expect them to struggle a lot, and they haven't been knocking anybody's lights out for sure, but I've been happy with how they've done so far. 15th place, the biggest disappointment this year, if not Stuttgart, is Hoffenheim. They have a measly, I guess I was going to say, measly for them probably, or their expectations, 14 points. So sitting kind of at the end of the table there. I believe they had a coaching change, and Oliver Baumann, their keeper, is a great keeper. Just a Bundesliga, I don't know if I could say legend, but definitely a staple of the Bundesliga. And he's actually getting some time on the German national team now, with Neuer retiring and Ter Stegen being injured. Baumann and Nubel are kind of splitting minutes under Julian Nagelsmann's German national team. So a player to look out for, and Hoffenheim has got to hope to do better in the Rückrunde. 16th place, we have Heidenheim with 10 points. Another team that I love, Heidenheim. I've gushed about their story so many times on this show, but Frank Schmidt has been their coach forever. He was a player. The team has no money. They're from a small town, and they somehow got promoted all the way up to the Bundesliga. A story that just doesn't happen in football these days. So a team that I love, and they started off the season smoking hot. Just lately, haven't been up to it. They have lost a lot of games in a row. They lost to Chelsea in the Conference League. They lost to Bayern 4-2. They even lost to Bochum, lowly Bochum, I think 2-0 the other week. So it's been a poor showing from them lately, but I'm going to hope they kind of climb the table a little bit more. And then we have 17th place, Kiel, with 8 points. A newly promoted side who doesn't really look like they belong in the Bundesliga. So we'll see how the season ends for them, but I don't predict them to go very much higher. And I also don't predict the last place team right now, VfL Bochum, who has 6 points, to go up very higher in the table, because they just haven't looked good this year. I think they have good fans, and I think they're a cool club, but they just have not looked good in the Bundesliga this year. So I think that's going to about do it and wrap up this State of the Season address. So as always, please like the video and subscribe on the YouTube channel. And leave a comment if you like the video format. Leave a comment about anything, really, because I read through all the comments and I respond to them all. So Jim will respond to the Chelsea comments, but anything about Bayern Munich and anything about this video, I will respond to. I really like to hear what folks have to say. If you disagree with me on anything, go ahead and tell me. That's okay. So leave a comment, subscribe, of course. We're trying to do more more for anybody who listens or watches these videos. So I think that's about it. Stay tuned during the international break. Stay tuned during the winter pause, because Chelsea's not on a pause. They don't do that in England. We'll be reacting to those matches. I have a lot I want to talk about in terms of contract situations for Bayern Munich and other news. We teased it at the end of the last episode, but there is a surprise coming in the summer that has to do with the city of Cincinnati, I can say. And we're going to talk about that more in the coming episodes. So I'm rambling a lot now, but again, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. It does mean a lot to me. You can check out the regular podcast show on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever. And I think that's going to be about it. Mia san Mia.